In this tutorial, we will learn how to grade a student's assignment. We've already created our assignment and made a submission under Student Preview. To grade the assignment, we are going to go to the Course Management Control Panel, Grade Center, and we are going to click on the Smart View that's been dedicated to assignments. Locate the column pertaining to the assignment. Click on the drop down next to the Needs Grading icon. In this case, you can see there are two attempts. I'm going to click on any one. This assignment was set up to receive unlimited attempts. And you can see that the student has made two attempts. At the very top, you see the student name and you see which attempt this is. This is one of two, one being the first attempt. Now we want to grade the last attempt. So there's two ways to do this. You can either click on this arrow to advance to the next attempt, or you can look to the right hand side panel where it says attempt 1, expand this box and you can go directly to attempt 2. For the sake of demonstration, these two attempts have been made differently. Attempt 1 is where the student typed their submission into the text box of the assignment, and attempt 2 is where they attached the exact same text as a Word file. And I want to show you the difference grading the two. Attempt 1, as I said, is just a text attempt. You can grade on the side on the rubric and provide feedback, but you don't have the option to do much inline grading. Whereas attempt 2 takes you to the new box view, which is an application that's integrated with e-learning that lets you grade inline. You're able to annotate on the assignment. You can save. You can also comment. Once you've made all your comments, you can close. You're also able to download the assignment here and print. Next, we move on to grading. On the right hand side panel, you see the assignment details on the top, which includes the class statistics, which is an average and the median pulled from the total submissions made in the class. And this is where you can assign a grade. This assignment was set up to be graded on a rubric. That being said, you don't have to grade on the rubric itself. You can simply enter a grade here. But since we have a rubric, it would make more sense to use that. There's two ways to grade on the rubric. You can either do it inline, which means within the same screen, or you can open the rubric in its own window. If you click on View Rubric in Window, the rubric opens up in a separate window and you can select points possible on the rubric. Notice that you have space to provide feedback to the student for every selection that you made. Once you've made your changes, you can save. The other way to grade on the rubric is inline. Simply click on the rubric title and this will bring up the rubric criteria and the point value or percentages. You can check the Show Descriptions box to view descriptions. Also check Show Feedback to be able to add a feedback for every selection you've made. In the end, you have a raw total that the system picks up based on the scores on the rubric. You can either choose this total or round it off. In this case, I'm going to round it off to 8.5. And this is where you can provide an overall feedback to the student and click on Save Rubric. You'll notice that the system tells me the rubric evaluation was saved, but the grade has not been submitted. To submit the grade, you'll need to click the Submit button. This is when the grade becomes visible to the student. Before we do that, there's another space where you can add feedback to the learner, and this is what the student will see in the Grade Center. You can enter in text as well as include an attachment, do a spell check, and format your text. You can also add grading notes that are going to be private to you, TAs, and graders. This helps you to keep a track of the basis for the grade. Even though you have a rubric, this lets you make additional notes on why a certain grade was given. Once you've made all your changes, you can submit, and the grade has now been posted. You'll notice that it is still editable, which means you can still click on this and change the grade. But any changes you make at this point will be recorded in the grade history. We'll go back to the Grade Center, and now you can see that this student's attempt has a grade. If I click on the drop down, I can see which attempt was graded. If I go into View Grade Details, I can see the history of attempts and the grade, as well as a rubric and the feedback posted to the learner. If I wanted to ignore this attempt, I can click Ignore, which gives the student another chance. The other thing to know about assignments is you're able to download all submissions to grade them offline. To do so, you can go to the contextual menu that's next to the column header and download all the files for this assignment. You can also view column statistics, which will tell you the overall performance of your students on this particular assignment. Finally, let's look at what the student sees. I'll go back to the student preview, and now I'm viewing the course as a student. Go to My Grades, find the assignment, and here is where I see my grade. This comment bubble indicates that the instructor has posted some feedback. If I click on this, I can see the feedback. If I click on View Rubric, I'm able to see my scores on the rubric. And with that, we come to the end of grading assignments.